I'm so happy that an organization that I'm a part of, the American Bar Association, has created a task force to protect democracy from Donald Trump. Although they don't say that, we know that's what this is all about. Trump is a threat, an existential threat to our democracy. And again, I'm elated to be a part of an organization, a professional organization, the ABA, who is interested in taking very seriously the threat that our democracy faces. I want to talk to you about that in this video. Stay with me. Hello, I am attorney Augustus Corbett. Welcome to the Defiant Lawyers. I'm one half of the Defiant Lawyers, and each and every week we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell. Thank you for staying with me. Now, as I said, the American Bar Association, an organization of over 1 million lawyers around the country, has created a task force to protect our democracy. I want to talk to you about some of the things that this task force intends to do between now and the November election. Now, before we get into that, I want to encourage you to go to Amazon, grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. I promise you, if you have an African-American boy in public schools, you need this book. Also, we're coming to the end of our summer reading program. If you want to still try to register your son so that we can have at least 3 or 4 weeks trying to help you get his reading level up if it's down, then go to our website at lljp.org and you can register him there, and we'll do whatever we can to help you increase his reading level, again, if it's down. Hey everyone, I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Recently, I took a look at our analytics and I noticed something shocking. Many of you watch our videos and I believe you enjoy them, but you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Again, I was shocked because I know our content is empowering and informative. Plus, our 2024 goal is to have 150,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Please help us by hitting that subscribe button, especially you young folks. We particularly want to increase our number of young subscribers. Thanks for all your continued support. We appreciate it very much. All right, so the American Bar Association, an organization that I have been a part of now for many years as a practicing attorney, has created this task force for American democracy. And as you see, this report was released August 2nd, 2024. Now, the two chairs, the co-chairs for this task force are two men who are very reputable in the legal community. First, there is Jay Johnson, who was over Homeland Security under the Obama administration. And then there's a former federal judge who's very conservative, actually, was once considered for the U.S. Supreme Court. You've heard from him before on my channel, J. Michael Luddick. Judge Luddick has led the way in trying to warn America about the threat to our democracy that Trump and MAGA poses. So he has put country over partisanship. Although he's a Republican, he sees the threat coming from the Republican Party. I heard him actually say that the Republican Party is really no longer in existence. It's been hijacked. That's quite a lot for a Republican to say about his own party. Now, we're going to play a video here in just a moment where they're going to tell you a little bit about this task force and how you too can play a part in this. All right, so let's go to that video, and we'll hear from Judge Luddick and Secretary Johnson.
As protecting democracy remains a central issue in the 2024 campaign, two leading voices are warning about the threat of authoritarianism and what the U.S. can do to protect its freedom. Retired federal judge J. Michael Luddick and former Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson are sounding that alarm. They both join me now. I appreciate your time. The decision, Judge Ludig, to do this with a bipartisan group of lawyers, can you explain the threat you see here?
Phil, thank you very much. And Secretary Johnson joins me in thanking you and CNN for your interest in the Democracy Summit here in Chicago and for joining us this afternoon. For reasons that we all know, Phil, American democracy and the rule of law are the issues of our time. And today, the American Bar Association and the nation's 1.3 million lawyers are rising to the moment, and they are answering the call to defend and support America's democracy and the rule of law in this moment, especially between now and the election in November. American lawyers are uniquely qualified, and they are uniquely obligated to support and defend America's democracy and the rule of law, and they are answering that call from the country to do that today. Our founding fathers feared this very moment in American history when the nation would be swaddled in demagoguery, and it would lead to Americans' abandonment of democracy itself and the rule of law. And that's why I believe that the election coming up in November is a test of Americans' commitment to American democracy and the rule of law.
Secretary Johnson, the threat itself, the warning that you're outlining here, how does it potentially undermine U.S. democracy?
Well, first, Phil, thanks for having us on, as Judge Ludig said. And we should be...
So before we hear Secretary Johnson, I want to highlight what you heard from Federal Judge Ludig. He is very, very clear about the threat that our country faces. He does not mince words. And once again, this is coming from a Republican. This is not a Democrat. He is not a liberal. He is not progressive. He just understands as a federal judge that our Constitution is being shredded and disrespected by the radical right-wing MAGA folks that are supporting Donald Trump. And he's concerned, just like us other Americans, this is an existential threat. We very well could become like some of the other countries around the world that have serious election issues, are controlled by authoritarians, autocrats, dictators in just 3 months. You may not want to hear this. You may think that this is hyperbole. It's just me. No, it's not just me. Again, this is the American Bar Association, the national organization of attorneys around the country, have gone to the extent of creating a task force to deal with this. Now, we're going to read some things from this report in just a moment, but let's go back and hear from Secretary Johnson.
This is not a campaign issue. This is an American issue. It's about our American democracy. The way I see the threats, given my security background, one, Americans are losing faith in their democracy. There's an open flirtation among some political leaders with authoritarian forms of government, fueled by overheated rhetoric, irresponsible rhetoric, frankly. And we're also seeing rhetoric that condones and supports violence in some instances. And correlate with that, there's an actual rise in incidents of political violence in this country just over the last 4 or 5 years, culminating, of course, with the attempted assassination of former President Trump on July 13th. So Judge Ludig and I are here as leaders of a task force at the ABA convention in Chicago, sending the call to lawyers that lawyers should be involved in tamping down the rhetoric, in volunteering to support election workers, in volunteering to be poll watchers themselves, in volunteering to speak to community groups about correcting misinformation, misimpressions about how elections work, and a number of other things. Given the background and the training of lawyers, given their skill at conflict resolution We think you lawyers are uniquely positioned at this critical moment in the history of our democracy to step up and support and defend the Constitution, the rule of law, just like doctors stepped forward during the COVID crisis. It's now time for lawyers.
Quite frankly, precisely what Secretary Johnson is saying is the reason why I am on YouTube. I'm on YouTube because I started noticing that the right-wing MAGA crowd were an absolute threat to our democracy and an absolute threat to civil rights. Because if you do away with democracy, civil rights goes out the windows. If you do away with the rule of law, civil rights goes out the window. There are no civil rights in dictatorships or in authoritarian countries. No civil rights. So I began to start doing what I could do. And I appreciate your support because you have helped our YouTube channel grow. You have been sharing our content and you've allowed us to get the message out. So we're doing all that we can. We intend to do more, and we will, as Secretary Johnson just said, we will be available to provide legal advice regarding voting on election day and leading up to election. And by the way, early voting starts soon. I believe it's in September. Also, you need to check your voter registration and make sure you've not been scrubbed from the election roll in your particular state, because the GOP is already doing all kinds of stuff to try to steal this election. All right? I mean, all kinds of stuff. And what we don't want is to end up like, for example, Venezuela, a country right now that's going through an election crisis. I want to show you a short video from their election situation, and we'll get back to the ABA in just a second. Watch this video.
Solamente quiero uno que sea serio y que diga la verdad, mano, que sea serio y que diga la verdad. Ellos cayeron y están claros, mano, están claros que cayeron. Por eso es que estamos en la pista, porque estábamos claros que ganamos, ¿está claro?
Porque estamos cansados. Tengo 23 años viviendo el mismo gobierno y ha sido siempre lo mismo. Mierda con más mierda para seguirse revolviendo la mierda, ¿no? Ya basta. Yo quiero un futuro para mi hija. Yo no he podido estudiar. Salí del bachillerato y no pude irme para la universidad porque me tocó trabajar.
La lucha de uno vale por la libertad de muchos.
Me emociona mucho decirles a todos que tenemos el...
So as you see there, they are right now, as we speak, in the middle of an election crisis. Now, we went through our own election crisis, right? January 6, 2021. My concern is, and obviously the concern of the ABA and millions of other people around this country is, the worst is yet to come. I think we could end up precisely where Venezuela is if we're not diligent. Now, just a little bit of background on Venezuela. I don't know a lot about Venezuela politics, but my understanding is a man named Nicolas Maduro, who was recently re-elected president of that country. However, the opposition leader, Mr. Gonzalez, believes the election was stolen. And Maduro is one that the United States government does not believe won the election. They believe he stole the election. In other words, he, in the U.S. government's opinion, is an authoritarian. He would be like our Trump here, who will most likely try to take this election and who claimed that the last election was taken from him, right? And then led a coup, led an insurrection, an unsuccessful coup and insurrection, but one nonetheless. So as Maduro has that country in its grips, we're trying to prevent Trump from getting in office and taking control of this country, setting aside the Constitution, implementing the Insurrection Act, and whatever else his handlers are telling him. And we just end up, again, like one of these third world nations. That we cannot allow to happen. We cannot allow that to happen, folks. We got to be very diligent and engaged with what's happening in our country right now. I want to read a few things from the report that the ABA created. All right. Our Constitution's existence for nearly 250 years makes it the longest serving written national constitution in the world. It has produced unparalleled prosperity and stability for many Americans over many generations and indeed for the world. And although we do not have yet achieved the full promise of its principles, they still serve as the measure of our aspirations. American democracy, as enshrined in the Constitution, not only guarantees equality under the law and holds officials accountable to citizens, but just as important, it creates a system of government that compels bargaining, negotiation, and compromise, which can only take place when we understand, as Abraham Lincoln reminded us, that the moment of our greatest national peril, that we are not enemies but friends. These bedrock principles and the openness of American society and our economy have enabled the United States to lead the world in innovation in technology, entrepreneurship, and civil liberties. So what this task force is telling us first and foremost is our Constitution is a great, great document and provides the stability of this nation. So any political party that wants to set it aside is a serious threat to our democracy. Let's keep reading. Lawyers and judges play a unique role in upholding the rule of law, ensuring that laws are applied equally to all citizens, and that government actions are subject to judicial review, leading to accountability, transparency, predictability, and governance. Now, how true that is. As a criminal defense and civil rights attorney, Chloe and I, my daughter, we ensure that the government is not breaking the rules. We ensure that the government is abiding by and complying with the U.S. Constitution. That is a big, big part of what we do. Now, our democratic system of governance allows all citizens to participate in the political process and in our governance through voting, running for office, serving on juries, boards and commissions, activism, and advocacy. Our elections are conducted with a high degree of fairness and transparency, and if legitimate concerns are raised, they are subject to judicial review, ensuring that the electoral system is free and fair and that voting results are accurate. It is these fundamental characteristics of our system of government that have led people around the world to look to the United States as a beacon of democratic ideas and as a model for a free and fair society. Today, however, our country and democracy face a wide variety of serious threats, including that of rising authoritarianism. Now, both Secretary Johnson and Judge Luddick both mentioned authoritarianism. That's what we are facing. Autocracy, dictatorship even. That is exactly what we're facing. So this goes on to say, for the first time in our history, we did not have a peaceful transition of power in our last presidential election. Political violence, both real and threatened, has raised its ugly head. American political discourse has become overly divisive, if not outright hostile to people of differing views. Our elections and election workers have come under unjustified, unfounded attacks before a single vote has been cast or counted. Now, let's be clear. Trump is the one who started this. He is the first American president who literally tried to lead an insurrection against our country. So his name is not mentioned here, but we know exactly who this is referencing. All right, let's keep reading. Our judges and judicial staff have faced threats of violence for simply doing their jobs. Those threats have come from Trump. Polls indicate an alarming number of Americans today distrust our democracy, are prepared to consider alternative forms of government, and a large percentage, in the range of 25%, say violence is justified if their candidate is not elected. We know all of that is coming from MAGA. All of that, or everything that was just said, comes straight out of Trump and MAGA. Another poll indicates 52% of young adults have little to no trust in government institutions. A lot of that is because Trump spent 4 years absolutely shredding and undermining our institutions. And approximately 38% of Americans support authoritarianism as a response to the direction of democracy in the United States. Again, those are the MAGA folks who, as I have said to you before, they're willing to accept authoritarianism, autocracy, even a dictatorship, out of fear that black and brown people will become the majority in this nation. And that has caused them to basically lose their minds. That has radicalized them. And so it doesn't matter what Trump says, what he does. For them, he is their great white hope. This fracturing of American democracy has led our adversaries to use it to attack democracies around the world and to exploit our challenges to their advantage. So we see here clearly the threat that the ABA has acknowledged and is now trying to do something about. I am so happy to be a part of the ABA with a dynamic organization of like-minded attorneys who will do what we need to do our part to protect our democracy. And for me, as an African-American attorney who practiced criminal law and civil rights law, to not only protect our democracy, but to protect our civil rights as African Americans. Because as I told you earlier, civil rights go away in an authoritarian government, in an autocratic government, in a fascist government. So, once again, I wanted to bring this exciting news to you. Help is on the way. The cavalry has arrived. The American Bar Association, again, the largest group of attorneys in the country, a bipartisan task force created to face down Trump's threat on our democracy, is here. You will be hearing more about that, and I will certainly be sharing more about this on the Defiant Lawyers YouTube channel. Let's stand up for democracy. And right now, the only way to stand up for democracy is by voting Kamala Harris into office. I've said, and I'll continue to say, one of those two people, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, will become president in the next few months. If Trump becomes president, I'm concerned, and many others are concerned, that our democracy will go away. And as he said to a group of his constituents, if they vote one more time and get him reelected, they won't have to vote again. What does that mean? Because he's going to do away with voting. He's going to declare himself, or fix it, as he said, where he or some other right-wing white supremacist will stay in office. We can't let that happen. We can't let that happen. So thank you for your continual support of the Defiant Lawyers YouTube channel. Keep sharing the content. Keep watching the videos from start to finish. Sometimes the best part of the videos are at the end of the videos. All right? So, thank you. Defend our democracy. Defeat Project 2025. And defend civil rights. Until the next time, I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. You have a good weekend. Peace.